Last week, we talked about how our mission statement is basically another way of saying that our mission as a church is to make disciples of Jesus Christ. When we speak of making space for Jesus to shape people together in God's love, we're really talking about making disciples. Most of you will be well familiar with Jesus' great commission to his followers to make disciples of all nations. In Matthew 28, he says, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." The Great Commission that Jesus has given to his church, both then and now, is to make disciples. Disciples are those who follow Jesus as master, and in the process become more and more like him, more and more like the master, more and more like Jesus. And Jesus is the ultimate expression of God's love. On the screen, you'll see one definition of discipleship that we found quite helpful. Discipleship is being with Jesus to learn from Jesus how to become like Jesus. As disciples follow Jesus and learn to live in his presence each day, they begin to reflect their master's likeness more and more. As Jesus himself puts it, it is enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher and a servant like his master. That brings us to an important question. What is Cornerstone's plan for making disciples? What's our strategy? That's where our discipleship pathway comes in. Cornerstone's discipleship pathway consists of 5 E's, and each one is a vital aspect of your development as a disciple of Jesus. All 5 of these elements interact dynamically and continuously throughout your lifetime. Remember, becoming like Jesus in character is the goal of Christian discipleship. Again, our discipleship pathway flows directly out of our mission statement. If our mission is making space for Jesus to shape people together in God's love, how do we go about doing that? What does that look like? Our discipleship pathway breaks it down. Specifically, we make space for people to establish identity in Jesus, embody the Jesus way of life, explore Jesus' call to life mission, extend Jesus' love in life mission, and experience Jesus' care and healing. Let's look at the first one. Establish identity in Jesus. These are spaces for Jesus to shape our sense of who we are in him. As disciples, the most important thing about us is who we are in Jesus. Whereas people tend to base their sense of identity on their profession or performance or social status, maybe on the opinions of others, those who follow Jesus find their identity in Jesus and in Jesus alone. But to live your identity, you have to know your identity. So in the songs we sing, and the sermons we preach, in our youth and children's ministries, in the adult Christian education electives we offer, and in our counseling ministry, we regularly make spaces for people to establish their sense of identity in Jesus. Next, we also make spaces for people to embody the Jesus way of life. These are spaces for learning how to put the commands of Jesus into practice, actual practice in our daily life. As we see in the Great Commission, Jesus clearly intends us to be and make disciples who put his commands into practice, to embody the way of life he modeled and taught. Go and make disciples, says Jesus, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, teaching them to put it into practice. Such obedience doesn't happen automatically, though. Obeying Jesus requires opening our lives to His empowering presence. That's why in the same breath, in the Great Commission, Jesus says, "Obey everything I've commanded you." And then He also says, "And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Along these lines, Cornerstone offers various learning labs throughout the year. And in our pulpit teaching, we frequently provide practical instruction and useful take-home resources and exercises to help folks put Jesus' teaching into actual practice in their daily lives. Next, we also make spaces for people to explore Jesus' call to life mission. These are spaces for discovering Jesus' unique callings on our lives. As followers of Jesus, we exist for the sake of God's world-restoring mission. God uniquely gifts and calls each of us to be agents of His mission. This aspect of the discipleship pathway includes spaces such as seminars, one-on-one coaching, and several other opportunities that will help you discover the life callings God has in mind for you, as well as what your strengths and spiritual gifts are. Next, we also make spaces for Jesus to extend God's love in life mission. These are spaces for joining God's world-restoring mission in Jesus. The more we're shaped in the likeness of Jesus, the more we will reflect and extend His sacrificial love to the world around us in every aspect of our lives. Having explored our callings, we can truly and fully engage in our unique roles as agents of God's mission. After all, that's what we're here for as Christians. This aspect of the pathway provides a wide variety of spaces for you to extend Jesus' love by serving in the church, in the greater community, and in the world. We also offer spaces for you to learn how to share your faith in Jesus with others. The explore and extend aspects of the discipleship pathway remind us that discipleship, being with Jesus to learn from Jesus how to become like Jesus, isn't just something we do for our own sakes. We do it for the sake of God's mission in Jesus to restore this fallen world. Jesus calls us to be and make disciples who obey His commands so that the world will be drawn to Him through the difference He makes in our lives, and how that difference, how His presence shines through us. Finally, we make spaces for people to experience Jesus' care and healing. These are spaces for Jesus to make the broken and needy whole. We all know too well that life has its highs and lows, as represented by the jagged green line in the graphic on the screen. There are times in life when each of us is going to need special care and healing from Jesus and from Jesus' people in order to be able to get moving forward again in the journey of discipleship. This aspect of the discipleship pathway features a cluster of ministries such as counseling, prayer ministry, support and recovery groups. We have a food bank, visitation and practical assistance for folks who are sick, disabled, or homebound for any other reason. Periodically, we also offer seminars and workshops on things like basic counseling skills, coping with anxiety, and other topics related to emotional and mental health. So the discipleship pathway is our main framework for making disciples at Cornerstone. Just about every ministry we have here relates back to that discipleship pathway in one way or another. All of our core ministries are aligned with this pathway: our children's, youth, group life, and worship ministries. In fact, next week, we'll be doing something special in class. We've developed a customized tool designed to help you discern which aspects of the discipleship pathway you should concentrate on at this stage of your spiritual journey. We'll walk you through that tool during the next session, trusting that the Holy Spirit will help you discern where to focus and what next steps to take on the discipleship pathway. One final word about the discipleship pathway. Our goal is to find ways of connecting people who come into contact with Cornerstone into a discipleship journey with Jesus. On the left side of this diagram, you can see a number of our front door ministries, some of which relate to the fact that Cornerstone Center is a community center style space. We're making spaces where relational bridges can be built between the people of this church family and our neighbors in the greater community through things such as sports and rec programs, third spaces. If you don't know what that means, if the first and second spaces where you spend your most time are home and work, then a third space is another place where people go to hang out and be together. Starbucks is often considered a third space. Our youth drop-in program and Open Table Thursday are examples of a third space. Worship service is, of course, the first contact point with this church body for many of our neighbors, many of the newcomers to this church. And we also like to serve the community beyond the walls of this church building in any number of ways. We do it here in Cornerstone Center, and we do it out there in the neighborhoods that surround us. Through the connections that are made on the left side, our hope and prayer, and we're seeing this happen more and more, is that folks will be linked over to the right side, to the disciple-making mission of this church, and find an on-ramp into the discipleship pathway. So next week, we'll walk you through the Discipleship Pathway reflection tool. I trust it'll be a time of Spirit-led discovery for you.